Hello, everyone. I'm Bandish, founder of The Curious Mindset, a private community for technology leadership teams powered by 64 Tech, an IT solutions provider of hardware, cloud, and IT services. Clearly, I need that today as well. Although we're powered by 64 Tech, our principle is simple: always give more than we take. No membership fees, no sales pitches, no pressure. Please do follow our LinkedIn page for updates on how 64 Tech can support you with technology challenges, or reach out if you're ready to shake things up with your IT suppliers. But here's the truth: the hardest part of leading a tech department isn't the technology, it's the people. The pressure to appear all knowing makes it tough to admit what we don't know or ask questions that show vulnerability. That's why the Curious Mindset exists. For new members joining today, this is a space where coaching, mentorship, and community come together to help technology leaders grow. We focus on three things: individual impact, helping you grow personally and professionally, especially if you don't have traditional support; team impact, strengthening leadership to build high performance teams; and community, because leadership is isolating, and here you'll connect with others walking the same path. Now, this all started from my own experience and a desire to support others on the same journey. I know how tough leadership can be, so we built this community on three guiding principles. Firstly, our North Star: no one leads alone. Secondly, our mantra: together we grow. And finally, our mission: to help technology leaders become the best versions of themselves. Now, before we dive in, a quick favor. This community grows through invitation and reputation, and the challenge: most tech leaders don't realize they need this until they experience it. If you believe in what we're building, you can help us in three quick ways. Stay connected, hit the bell on our LinkedIn page so you never miss any future posts. Show your support by leaving a Google review or LinkedIn recommendation if our team reach out. And spread the word. Invite tech leaders in your network using our website form, or forward Bryony's email. In return, our commitment is this: together with the team, we'll keep making this better fortnight after fortnight. We'll listen to your feedback and shape this around what matters the most to you. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers: our resident host, Andy McMenemy; for our Q&A, our technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell; and our special guest, superhuman Jim Steele.
Bandish, thank you so much. And as always, thank you so much for the generosity from yourself through 64 Tech in supporting the Curious Mindset. Without your support and generosity, this simply would not exist as a platform for our tech leaders to be able to become the very best version of themselves. Now, we've had a fantastic break over the summer, but I know from being in touch with a lot of people that there's still a lot of chaos going on out there today. So I'm absolutely delighted to be able to bring back a previous speaker, Jim Steele, the author of Unashamedly Superhuman. And Jim's going to talk to us an awful lot today about exactly how we become the best versions of ourselves. So if any of you are facing chaos out there, there's going to be some clarity for you. Jim, it's an absolute pleasure to be your host today and to invite you in. And I'm absolutely personally very curious because I love the subject matter you're going to be talking to us about today.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to what will be a series of conversations. Looking forward to it very much. I mean, not just because I have spoken at a group before, face to face, and I think I remember them being particularly enthusiastic group to work with. I'm sure one or two of them might have been there on the call today, and a lot of new people too. So yeah, I'm sure the uptake's going to be exciting to say the least. We'll see.
So, Jim, in these ever-changing times that we're facing, especially with the kind of phenomenal growth of AI and the exponential kind of developments that are happening, it's not unreasonable for people to sometimes to feel a little bit left behind and maybe feel a little bit like they're not quite got their finger on the pulse. Now, I know that you talk inside of the Superhuman, Unashamedly Superhuman, about, you know, this rich pool of potential that we've got inside of us. And sometimes we don't associate that with resilience, right? We seem to see ourselves on the wrong side of that equation. Help us to understand how you view it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole session, these conversations we're going to have, I can unpack that. And potential is an interesting one because it's an abstract, and I was trying to get behind some strategy that allows us to follow almost a formula to tap potential. And when I was researching the book, The whole world turned upside down, 2020, 2021. Over that following year, I was doing the research, and I remember speaking on a webinar, a couple of thousand people, and I just said, hey, how much potential do you think you're actually tapping then? What do you do with that question? What number feels about right? You know, and I don't mean effort, I mean potential. And the numbers came pouring in the chat box, right? Everything 50, 60, 70, 38. I mean, some quite specific answers. But one number never goes in the chat box, ever. Never seen it, right? No one puts 100% in the chat box. Everyone has this assumption there's something to be had. And I wanted to work that out. Well, how do you gain access to that? Not just for ourselves, but for the teams we lead as well. So do you want me to jump into I've got a few slides I'd like to share. That's
Great,
okay.
yeah. Brilliant.
Okay, well, before I put the slide deck up, maybe we'll use the chat function. I'll get a little bit of input from the room here. The title of the session is The Change Ready Leader, How to Lean into the Adventure. And I selected that word adventure specifically. I think it's an interesting word. So why did I choose that? Okay, why don't you help me out here? If I say to you, what word comes to mind when you think of an adventure? Okay, what word comes to mind? Just put in the chat, just so I can get a sense for what the room thinks about this term. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we got excitement. What else have we got? Indiana Jones. Yeah, fun, newness. Thanks, Rebecca. James, the unknown, for sure. Okay, where else we going? Learning something new. Holiday, I'll take that. Uncertainty, bravery, exploration. Love it. Yeah, excitement. You know, and the words can keep coming in, right? What you'll see in the chat are two types of answer. So as I pop my screen up, here we go. Two types of answer, and they're not always positive, right? You know, the adventure can include a whole range of words. You might get challenge, fun, achievement, growth. You'll see words that connect to that, but equally the unknown, risk, danger, difficulty. And the point with the adventures, psychologists love this word when they're trying to help people lean in to a future that's uncertain, right? Because you can't predict everything. It's an abstract about the future, but you can predict the way you lean in. And so they use this term adventure, not because it's predicated on success or failure. In fact, the adventure, all the snakes and ladders are in there, right? All the ups and downs are part of the adventure. The value is the adventure itself. And why it's a good word is it triggers dopamine in the brain. If I say to you, hey, do you want to go on an adventure? Even before I say what it is, people tend to psychologically lean in. It's like, what are we doing? It's like an intrigue about it, because dopamine is this neurotransmitter that gets us to anticipate something, particularly something worthwhile or pleasant or some sense of reward. So even if the reward is handling the risk or exploring the unknown, right, it keeps us on the front foot. So I'm going to maintain that term. We'll unpack this a bit during this conversation. So again, yeah, I've heard that you, thanks for mentioning the book, by the way. I believe that everyone's getting a copy of the book. And look, there's a big difference between being given a book and wanting a book. And that's not lost on me. So I suppose if I have one undercurrent objective for the session is that by the end of it, you'll be intrigued enough to dive in. But what I try to unpack alongside potential was this concept of mindset, and also, you know, to dive into resilience a little bit. And I wanted to reframe this somewhat. So, you know, mindset to me, it's not just about being positive. I'm more for being positive, but that's not the intent. I wanted to explore mindset in terms of what's the optimum mindset for the situation we find ourselves in. It's a little bit like, anyone done a parachute jump? Jumped out of an airplane? I'm sure some have. If ever decide to jump out of an airplane, when you're on the ground checking the parachute, the optimum mindset would be pessimistic or skeptical or untrusting. It's the perfect mindset because it provokes the behaviors called check parachute many times. They have no problem with that difficult conversation. Who packed it? Did you pack it? How many times did you pack the You know, that's what a skeptic does. Perfect mindset in that situation. But once you get 12,000 feet up or 3,500 meters up in the air, you better become an optimist, right? And it's not because it's right, it's optimum, because the pessimist up there is still thinking, is it going to open? It might not. What if it doesn't? What if the spare one on the front doesn't work? Hang on, why is there a spare one on the front? You know, it's not wrong, but it stops them doing the one thing they were there to do, right? Jump. They have the skills to jump. but they can't access them because the mindset's not optimum. So the discussion we'll have around mindsets, and certainly how it connects to AI, is what's the optimum mindset, not the right mindset. And then resilience, resilience, the brand of resilience is often connected with things like grit, endurance, toughing things out. And there's something in that. But I don't think it's sustainable, right? And I want to reframe the concept of resilience. So I think resilience is much more about adaptability. And in fact, the more you can adapt to a situation, the less you have to endure. So we're going to explore some science on that, and a really interesting science hack for how to build the structure in the brain that's connected to things like willpower and drive. And like everything else in the book, I'm into results, right? Can you test the content? I want you to test the ideas, and judge by your own results. All right, so just jump in. So when I talk potential, if we tap into potential, we tend to get better. We tap into mindset, we get psychologically smarter. And when we tap into resilience, we get stronger. And that's the intent, that's the output of the strategies. So if we start with better, so why better? Anyone into Formula One or seen this documentary Drive to Survive? I'm sure some of you would have picked up on this. So many years ago, more than 20 years ago, I heard something that stuck with me. I'm still talking about it, clearly. I met a guy called Frank Williams. I did some work with the Williams team. And at that time, they were the best team. They were the most successful team at that time. And I asked him, what's the most important thing from your perspective that connects to performance within your team or your business? And he said, that's an easy answer. Didn't even think about it. I said, okay. He said, let me give me an example. He said, in my world, he said, now we are up there with the best of the best. He said, in Formula One, now at that time, there were 14 races in a season. It's a lot more now. Started in February, finished in November. He said, if you're the fastest team in race one, if you don't improve during the season, by the last race in November, you'll be the slowest car on the track. And I said, it kind of blew my mind. I said, seriously? He said, that's the nature of our business. And I don't think it's quite as extreme now. And maybe life isn't as extreme as that, although I don't know. I don't want to pretend to be in your lane. You're in tech. I'm on the outside looking in. But when I look and hear about Gen AI and everything that's coming around with that, to me, it seems like the pace of change is pretty fast. And if I'm not improving incrementally or exponentially, at some point, as good as we are now, it's not going to be good enough. And that's kind of what he was saying, right? You can be the best of the best. Just because you're the best doesn't mean things aren't going to change through time. So the inference on better is not that we're not good enough. It's that the world is going to move, and it continues to move. And so this is incremental, marginal gain we're looking to. So, better at what specifically? Now, there's a question that I always ask when I'm asking people to think about performance and connecting this concept of better. And if I was to ask you this question, in fact, in a minute, we'll go back to the chat. Let me set this up. What I want to explore with you in your role as a leader is, what do you think right now are the personal attributes and the characteristics that are most important for you? And for me to set that up, what I mean by that is, you talked a minute ago about, the best version of ourselves. Well, imagine, you're performing at your best. Those days you get, right, where it's going to be a good day. From the minute you get up, you get on a roll, right? All the lights are green today. You come out of tough meetings and you said the right thing at the right time and you were just sharp, right? That version of you. So if we gave you the opportunity to take another 6-month holiday of your dreams starting tomorrow, and the deal is this: your companies can't afford to lose you for 6 months, or you wouldn't be in the room, right? So if you're going to go, you have to replace yourself with somebody who's as good as you. And they're as good as you at your best. If at any point they underperform, right, you don't get this free 6-month vacation, 5-star accommodation, first-class travel, full pay while you're there, all expenses covered. If they're as good as you for the entire 6 months, you can stay on the beach. Right? If they drop below your standard of excellence, you're on the next plane home. So you want to find someone that you can back, right? Now, I know you're busy, so I'm going to find this person for you. Now, I'm asking you, well, who am I looking for? What is it about this person? What are their attributes, their characteristics? I want to get a list. So let's see what the room thinks. So what would you put in the list? This person needs to be what? What is it about this person? Thank you. Okay, integrity, accountability, flexibility, consistently Faithful team members, love it. Motivated, resilient, obviously curious. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, what else you going? Authentic, again, they have integrity. Empathetic, love it. I'll get one or two more. Trustworthy, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, a great communicator, good at building relationships. Okay, we get the idea. Now, as you look, if you look at the characteristics that come into the chat, what you'll notice is they split into two very separate groups, if you like. You've either said something based on your competency to do something well. So a good communicator, good at building relationships. You could be well organized, right? You have a good knowledge of your market, right? You're good at something. Or you've said things that have nothing to do with your competence, your skill sets. And in fact, they're more mindset answers than skill set, right? Positive, enthusiastic, patient, trustworthy, empathetic, curious. These have nothing to do with your skill sets. And when I started my business, consultancy back in the early 90s, it was the first project I ran where I went out to my clients, to the high performers like you, and basically said, what do you think it is about you that makes you so good? And they brainstorm a list of 10, and I would collect in these lists. We had thousands of them. And we looked at the data, and it was suggesting, interestingly, that about, not unlike the list today in the chat, 70+% of the answers were more mindset driven than skill set driven. Now, it doesn't mean to say that one's more important than the other. Okay, in other words, I'm not saying mindset's more important than skill set. I mean, the fact that most answers connect to that makes it relevant. And the challenge is it's a bit of an abstract mindset. If I want to build and develop a skill, that's a much more linear process than building and developing mindsets within an organization. But it makes it relevant. So it's not more important. And I'll give you an example. It's a little bit like, I don't know, I've met many people, I'm sure you have too, who are super motivated, highly motivated, got a great mindset, but they lack the relevant skills, right? I mean, idiots, but worse, highly motivated idiots. When I left school, my first job was in engineering. I was a mechanical engineer and I was useless. I was very motivated. I was super enthusiastic. And my manager would tell me almost on a daily basis that I was an idiot because I wasn't very good. But he was wrong. I was a highly motivated idiot, which is dangerous around heavy machinery. So that's not enough. Equally, it's not to say that, having this, in fact, maybe that's really obvious. What's less obvious is having this competency and the skill is never a predictor of performance. I'll say it again, having the competency is never a predictor of performance. And you can often see this, you can see it in sports much more readily. If you go to any golf club in the world, you go to the driving range, the practice area, and you'll watch people teeing off one after the other straight down the middle of the range. You then follow them to the first tee, put some money on it, put a crowd around them watching, and then stand back. And you'll often see a very different level of performance there compared to the practice area 20 minutes ago, right? And you go, clearly you have the skills. You've been demonstrating them today. They're just not showing up. When the pressure's on in the heat of the moment, something happens psychologically and they don't have access to those trained resources. So clearly mindset plays a part when it comes to performance. So the question is, and we'll lean in a second to the world that you operate in as best I can. I don't want to clumsily stumble into your lane. I know my lane, but I want to try and make some connection to your field. So, when you think about mindset, what's leading it, what's influencing it, not just for us, but for the teams we lead. So one of my clients in the US is Deloitte. And there's a guy over there I work with called John Hagel. He runs the Center for the Edge, which is a research hub. And he made a global study of some of the world's most innovative, high-performing teams. And there was one common denominator. And as it says there, it said those that went the furthest were always the ones who had a purposeful vision. Well, that's pretty straightforward. But the last bit I find interesting, a purposeful vision of the future based on potential growth rather than past results, right? Based on potential growth rather than past results. Now, that's interesting because that's building into an abstract. One, the future is abstract. We don't know what's going to happen. But trying to inspire a team around a future where there's so much, uncertainty would probably be a fair word, that they can buy into and believe is not easy to build it out of potential. In fact, I remember coming out of 2020, I'm sure you saw this too. Almost every conference I went to, somebody was talking about this VUCA world. I've not seen much of it of late. to be fair, but I don't think it's any less VUCA-like, right? For all the obvious reasons. You know, there's volatility, right? Globally, there's uncertainty, right? There's complexity and there's ambiguity. But what's interesting about the VUCA model is the solution is another iteration of VUCA. And this is what you'll see if you dive into that topic. The antidote to volatility is vision. The antidote to uncertainty is understanding. From complexity, it's clarity. And then for ambiguity, it's agility. So to look at John Hagel's data and say the successful high-performing teams were leaning into a vision based on potential growth. Even in a world of uncertainty, which we can't bank on, we can certainly bank on our intent and we can bank on our ambition. And there's a slide that I showed at the face-to-face event, which I'm going to show it to you again anyway. It doesn't work quite so well virtually, but it does make a strong point. When I show you this slide, just notice what you see. Now you can put in the chat when I ask you a Y or an N, a yes or a no. Yes, I can see it. No, I can't. Just so I get a little bit of feedback from the room. So when I show you this slide, the first thing you will see is an arrow. I'm not asking you about that. So the arrow is pretty clear, is pointing down. But can you see the fly? Is the fly clear to you? And of course, it's an abstract, a little bit like the future. The future's abstract. But can you see the fly? And if you can see it, you're thinking, well, obviously, why can't everyone see it? If you can't see it, right, you're thinking, what? What are they talking about? So all I wanted to show in the chat was there's a mixture. And you'll see that there are a number of N's and Y's. Okay. Now, the fly is simply representative of the future that we're trying to inspire the team to move towards. It's abstract. If you can see it, so I can see some yeses, couldn't be clearer to you, right? It's huge, right in front of you. If you can't see it, and you're thinking, what are you talking about? Fly, then you can't connect to this abstract vision. If you can't connect to it, you can't be inspired by it. You can't engage with it. Now, if I'm saying, look, team, here's the vision for the future. It's called Fly. Are you with me? Those that can see it can either go, yep, I get it, I'm with you. Or, yep, I get it, I'm out. It's not for me, right? If you can't see it, then you can't really engage. So I've left it up there now for a few. Now, I suspect now one or two are going, oh, got it, I can see it, and it'll drop in. So if you can now see it, I'm asking you, well, what's the matter with the others? Why can't they see it? This couldn't be clearer to you. If you still can't see it, and I'm going, are you trying to be awkward? I've told you the vision. The vision's called Fly. I got 40%, 50% of the room with me. Now think about this in the context of a business. If I'm articulating the vision and I'm going, do you get it? Can you see it? If I leave you long enough, not seeing the vision and Fly isn't clear, it's going to become irritating. And in fact, far from inspire, which is the purpose of the vision, it will demotivate the room. So what happens in a business when you're communicating the vision of the future to your team and some are seeing it, some aren't, right? What do you tend to do? Well, you tend to have an offsite. You'll have an offsite, you'll have a Q&A, you'll have some breakouts, you'll have some discussions, and you'll explore elements of the vision. And finally they go, oh, Fly, right, Fly, F-L-Y. And like, I'm sure you can see it now. Suddenly you go, it couldn't be clearer. Now I can then go back to how it was, but now we've honed in on it and you can see it, and we go back to the abstract version, it's still pretty clear to you. Now, I guess the key question is, was it always there? Well, of course it was always there, but just because it was there didn't mean we could see it. And if we couldn't see it, we couldn't connect to it. Now, when you're running a business or running a team and you're articulating the intended vision, the ambition, you know, someone's saying, yes, I can see it's fine. Someone's saying, no, I don't get it. Why are we doing this? That's perfectly fine too, because that offers an option for a communication, a conversation until they go, oh, I get it. Now I see it. The worst situation is when you go, can you see the vision? Is it clear? We're calling it Fly. The worst situation is when someone goes, what? Fly? Yeah. Oh, yeah. The vision, Fly. And it's not till after the meeting in the coffee break when they're going, I couldn't see it. Could you? I didn't want to say anything. He seems so enthusiastic. Like, that's a nightmare for a leader, because now they've told me they can see the vision and they can't. And I don't know why they're disconnected. So this aspect of clarity around intent, not just what we're trying to do, maybe not even just how we're going to do it, but perhaps why we're doing it. When you pull those three things together, it triggers something very specific in the brain. And this is where you get more bang for your buck. When the seeking system of the brain switches on, and it's called the ventral striatum, don't need to remember that. The seeking system comes on, people start to see things that otherwise they'd miss. And it's a little like if you went out and bought a grey Audi, a brand new car tomorrow, what would you see everywhere for the next few days? You just start seeing Audis everywhere. You're not looking for them. You're not trying to see them because it's front of mind at an unconscious level. You start to notice the things that connect to it. And that's the power of having clarity. In spite of the ambiguity, a clarity of intent, the clear vision, right, sets off this seeking system. But there's something else I want to discuss, which it's like a turbocharger for the seeking system. So if better is switch on the seeking system, smarter, this element of mindset, and we could go in many directions here, but I want to focus on, again, an abstract. And the abstract is this concept of belief. I came across this recently, which I thought sums it up quite well. Witches call it spells, religious people call it prayer, spiritualists call it manifestation, atheists call it the placebo effect, and scientists call it quantum physics. Everyone's arguing over its name, and not denying its existence. This idea of a belief. How do you build belief systems into the vision when you're leading a team? Now, there's many ways we could do this, right? This is where I want to try and lean into your world. Now, again, as I said before, I don't want to clumsily pretend I'm tuned into the tech in the same way that you are. However, I'm into it. I'm curious. And some of you may have been there. I went to a conference recently in the summer, the South by Southwest, which was like a festival. And there was a lot of tech conversations. I went to a number of sessions, a number of futurists. And I was trying to understand what's happening because it's not my field. So I guess I'm, maybe not the people you lead, but people in your organizations who are slightly disconnected from the topic when it comes to generative AI. And the point of the conversation around belief, and our beliefs are being shaped by all sorts of information, some factual, some speculative. And when I was there, I heard many futurists talk, and I don't know, I kind of left with the feeling that I don't know whether this is the end of the world, right, with Gen AI, or the beginning of the most incredible future we can't even imagine. It was somewhere in between those 2 points. But with belief, it's not so much what we believe, it's what we need to believe in order to align our beliefs to our goals or to the vision. So here's what I did. I met one of the guys there, super teched up, knew his stuff. And I ran a conference for one of our clients, and I asked him to come along to help me with the session. What I wanted to get an understanding of was the way people are perceiving generative AI, right? So, well, here's what I did. We were utilizing obvious tech like Slido and gathering people's input from the room, and then pushing it through some Gen AI that I didn't understand, but he did. And I said, let's find out what the most common beliefs are. And there was about 1,000 people. So they're all putting their information in and they're synthesized. And this was the first one that came out. The top 3 beliefs from the room. Now, again, this wasn't a tech audience. This was the wider community of the business. That was the first one, which I can certainly relate to, right? I'm not as informed as you. AI will replace me and I won't be able to keep up. So the concept of belief isn't what's right or wrong. It's which beliefs are going to lead this seeking system to take us in our desired direction of travel. But every belief has an impact. So the impact of that belief is it creates avoidance. Like, why would I invest my time in it if I believe that to be the case? So then I asked the AI, once we put all the beliefs in, to come up with a reframe. And the reframe it came back with was, AI is here to assist, not erase. I mean, AI would say that, right? That was my skeptic's hat on. But I thought, okay, if that's the reframe, what's the belief? So I then put it back to the room. And I said, if we believe that to be true, what are some alternative beliefs that are more empowering, that connect more to our desired vision? And again, they inputted all their answers and it pulled it all together and came out with that. AI extends my strengths and multiplies my impact. Now, I'm not pitching for which one of those is true, right? We can defend our belief systems, but the impact of holding that belief is it directs our focus onto desired results. So it's not, again, about which is right and which is wrong, which is the more empowering alternative to lead us toward our outcome. And the room found that to be palatable. Look, you've all heard of growth mindset, right? Growth mindset is the ability or one essence of it, is the ability to see things from opposing viewpoints, not to be fixed. At least suspend our doubts and consider other alternatives. So I asked for the second one. So what's right or what's wrong is irrelevant. Which belief leads us towards our desired outcome? The next one, the next most popular or common, was the pace of change is too fast. I'll never learn fast enough. Now, again, if I had more time with you, I would be asking you to fill in the blanks here to come up with the empowering alternatives. It would be easier for you, I would suspect. But the impact of holding that belief is what I was saying to the room, is it creates a sense of overwhelm. That's going to put you in a state of mind that's going to stop you leaning in. So what's the reframe? The reframe that came back was learning as a journey, not a race. Nice, catchy, right? What's the empowering belief that would sit within that? And again, the room contributed. It was pulled together in Slido, and it came back with, I can adapt step by step. Each additional skill I build compounds over time. Nice. Now, again, I'm not trying to sell a belief system. I'm saying which is the one to adopt, bearing in mind the future we're looking towards. And the third one, which again, oh, by the way, yeah, there's always an impact. That belief tends to impact on our focus on continuous learning. Something else that's controllable. So taking someone that's maybe out of our control and focusing on the controllable. So the third one was, I'm not tactical enough to benefit from AI. Now, again, this is not a belief that you'd hold, but people in the organization, I suspect, possibly do. And they think it with good reason. I mean, that's been their experience. Beliefs are a reflection of things we've experienced to date. But the impact of that belief is it tends to discourage exploration. So pop them all into the AI, it came back with a reframe. Curiosity matters more than current capability. Which, when you consider that, the room starts to think, well, there's some sense to that. That has some logic within it. What would be an empowering alternative to the first belief based on that reframe? And what came back was AI is becoming user-friendly, more user-friendly. What matters is experimentation. And if you assume that to be true, at least until you start to gather more evidence to reinforce the belief, the impact is you tend to focus on the creative process. So I'm sure you can see the point that I'm making, that beliefs filter the way we see things. They supercharge this seeking system. And if we can get a community or an organization or a team to consider what are the alternatives, the empowering alternatives that set the seeking system up, so they start to look to the future with a little more optimism, let's put it that way, and dare I say, even excitement. So again, it's not what we believe, it's what we need to believe to align our beliefs to our goals. So I want to just use that frame and connect it to our role as leaders specifically. And there's a way I would introduce this. In fact, this happened at a conference not that long ago. I mentioned this at the live event I was at. And somebody came to me during the lunch break and said, Jim, you were talking this morning about performing under pressure, handling stress. And she said, I'm running the London Marathon in 5 months. I said, okay, well, good luck with that. She said, yeah, the thing is, even thinking about it, I can feel my temperature rise, my heart's going. I can feel the stress. It's 5 months away. Whenever I think about it, I start to get stressed out. How do I deal with that? I said, okay, well, what are you asking me? She said, well, how do I get rid of the stress? She said, look, I'm no athlete. Now think about that. That's a belief system. I'm no athlete. She's got a marathon in 5 months, right? And she said, by the way, I heard that someone dropped dead last year in the middle of the marathon. I said, I heard about that too. She said, how am I supposed to deal with that? So her seeking system is being consumed by the belief system that she's no athlete. There's a danger ahead potentially, and she's got a marathon in 5 months. There's this huge disconnect between the goal and the belief system, the identity of who she is. And I said, do you understand that? Can you see the disconnect? I said, your seeking system is going to take you further away from the start line if you hold on to that. Now, it's not wrong to think that, but it's not going to guide you in the direction you want to go. I said, so look, here's my best advice. I said, look, we're out tonight. We had a networking event. I said, when someone says to you, what are you into outside of work? And you say, yeah, I like to travel. I got the family. I want you to look them in the eye. And I want you to say, oh, by the way, I'm a marathon runner. And she went, what? I said, I want you to say, I'm a marathon runner. And she went, well, I haven't done it yet. I said, no, I know that. You know that. But your brain doesn't care. Your brain doesn't care. It will feed on the information that you give it. I said, you need to, and I don't want to crowbar a technical analogy in here, you need to upgrade your operating system. Your operating system is the culmination of your belief systems. which filters the way you experience things. I said, you need to upgrade that and align your belief with the goal that you chose, or don't do it. I can get rid of your stress in a heartbeat. Don't do them. Take it out of your schedule, right? So now I got to do it. I'm with a charity. I said, okay, I'm a marathon runner. I said, oh, by the way, I know it's delusional because you're not yet. You haven't done it, right? That will be the confirmation, and life will catch up. We're going to find out. But what's going to get you doing the things you need to do is to assume the identity of the person that connects to that desired outcome. I said, and you can justifiably claim now to be a marathon runner because you're doing marathon runner things. Are you training for this thing? She went, yeah, 5 times a week. I said, who does that? Marathon runners. You're a marathon runner. I said, are you buying the Lycra and the 100-pound shoes? She went, yeah. I said, of course you are. You're a marathon runner. I said, are you reading about running yet? She went, what? I said, are you reading about running? She went, yeah, I've got a few magazines about running. She went, marathon runners? Correct. I said, you're doing the things a marathon runner would do. You can claim to be a marathon runner. I said, but here's the point. Ultimately, what the marathon runners do. Yeah, they run marathons. You'd expect within your schedule. That wouldn't freak you out because your identity is aligned around the desired outcome. So claiming to be a marathon runner, telling the truth in advance, way before the big day, is the psychological hack. But this also fits with leadership too. In fact, I'm with a group of CTOs next week in Dallas, about 50 of them, and they're just about to step into the seat, right? It's preparing them to step into their role as CTO. And part of the conversation we'll have will be about imposter syndrome. Whenever you lean into something where you're having to step up, right? Do you feel that you are the person for that role, right? Now you build those beliefs over time. I said, but you can also just carve out an identity statement that puts you into the position you need to be in psychologically. You know, tell the truth in advance. I'm an adaptive leader who thrives in uncertainty and turns change into opportunity. I could script out that identity. I could start to run that pattern in my head, even if I don't feel it's true yet. If it leans into the objective that I have, what tends to happen is the seeking system switches on and we start to see the things, have the conversations, read the books, go on the programs, right? Where we start to gather the data we need to be that person in real life. So there's some connection here. My point is between our belief system and the way we'll see the opportunities or the uncertainty that lies ahead. So better switch on the seeking system. Smarter, you turbocharge it by connecting your vision and your belief. And then stronger, and you'll find a lot more in the book about this, but you know, stronger, when I talk about stronger, again, I want to talk about resilience just very briefly before we get into Q&A. Now, with resilience, again, it has this brand, right? The definition, the capacity to endure and recover from stresses. I just don't think it's I don't think it's a sustainable viewpoint, right? Bend or break. The first picture you'll see if you Google resilience. But the second picture you'll see is this one, which I think is a better picture. It's recognizing the environment's difficult, but it's found some way to adapt. Right. And in fact, I saw these recently. I don't know if you've seen any of this online. So Anthony Joshua, ex-world heavyweight boxing champion in the left hand, after his training session, jumps in the ice bath. He is clearly having to endure that. It's an endurance test. I don't know who this person is, but she's practically meditating. And all I'm saying is, which one is more sustainable? I mean, they're both in exactly the same situation. An ice bath is an ice bath. It's cold. It's shockingly cold, right? You can only sustain it for so long. So how do I find a way to adapt, get into the calm state of mind in spite of the stressor? So I'm going to turn to a neuroscientist for this. Dr. Andrew Huberman, he's a professor at Stanford. He's someone I connected with a lot when I was researching the book. So again, he's given me some good data. You may have heard about, I don't know if you know this guy on the right-hand side. Anyone recognize this guy? Yeah, okay. So David Goggins, he's this ex-Navy SEAL, right? Super tough guy, right? His brand is tough. 3,000 chin-ups, right? Get down and give me 10, that guy. So initially, I wasn't that interested in watching it because that's not really my take on resilience, but I did watch it, and I'm glad I did because I saw something in this. I'm going to show you a 60-second video clip in a second, and it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, that is incredible because it talks to not why somebody is resilient or got drive or willpower. It talks about how do you build the structure in the brain responsible for it? And really, this was a game changer for me and certainly many clients that I've worked with and shared this with since. And he talks about this brain structure. You don't need to remember this. It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Forget about that. What he talks about is how it functions and how do you build it? How do you build this system so that when you need resilience, because we don't need resilience every day, right? We don't need willpower every day, but there'll be a time when we do. What's going to determine our reaction under those circumstances will be how we've kind of built or structured the system. Let me show you the video. It's literally less than 60 seconds, and I'll see what you think about this.
I'm going to share a little neuroscience tidbit,
Love it.
but I think it's one that you'll appreciate. Most people don't know this, but there's a brain structure called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. But what's interesting about this brain area is there are now a lot of data showing that when people do something they don't want to do, like add 3 hours of exercise per day or per week, or when people who are trying to diet and lose weight resist eating something.
Right.
When people do anything that they, and this is the important part, that they don't want to do.
Right.
It's not about adding more work. It's about adding more work that you don't want to do.
Yes.
This brain area gets bigger.
Yep.
Now, here's what's especially interesting about this brain area to me. And by the way, I'm only learning this recently because it's new data, but there's a lot of it. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex, it's especially large or grows larger in people that see themselves as challenged and overcome some challenge. In many ways, scientists are starting to think of the anterior mid-cingulate cortex not just as one of the seats of willpower,
Right.
but perhaps actually the seat of the will to live.
See, now we're talking.
When I started seeing the data on the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, I was like, whoa, this is interesting.
Yep.
And all the data point to the fact that we can build this area up.
Yep.
To me, this is one of the most important discoveries that neuroscience has ever made, because it's that I don't want to do something, but do it anyway.
That's right.
That grows this area.
I love that because that's how I've lived my entire life. I don't know anything about that, but people go, man, you have such a strong will. It's something that you build.
Yeah, I like that as a reframe, right? It's something that you build. It's not something that you are, right? And literally what Huberman is saying is it's a structure that gets bigger and smaller, right? Depending on the activities that we engage in. So this choosing to do the hard things builds this brain structure. What I like about that is then you can rely on it showing up when you need it in the future. And I'll give you one simple example. By the way, doing things that we kind of don't want to do, the kind of things that we need to do, but you kind of put off. Every time you do and lean into it, this structure gets bigger. It could be something simple. It could be, I don't know, doing your expenses. I mean, unloading a dishwasher. It's not like big things. It's little things that constantly build this structure so I can then rely when I need it. But there's a key word here. And he says this later in the session, we grow in proportion to the challenges we take on voluntarily. And voluntarily is the key word. And I'll finish with this, right? I'm sure you're familiar with these activities, things like Tough Mudder, Spartan Trail, Wolf Run. Have a think about this. If you broke down in your car at, I don't know, 4 a.m. somewhere, there's pouring rain, and you had to walk 4 hours back home, that is miserable. However, if you got up at 4 a.m. and went and crawled through a muddy field full of obstacles for 4 hours, like suddenly that's inspiring, right? The reality is not that different. The only difference is you did that on purpose. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do it, but you chose to do it, right? So that's the differentiator, choosing to lean in, the choice, rather than feeling I have to, even though I feel that's probably the case, but the reframe is what sets this system up. And that brings us right back to where we began, the adventure. Those activities, they call them adventure activities for a reason, because it causes people to start to think about, why would I do this? Not just how am I going to do this? And you find some rationale. When you tie these 3 things together with a team, switch on the seeking system, focusing on being better, connecting the vision to the belief, which is about smarter, and then getting them to lean into the adventure, which is stronger. Well, what happens then is you define the way you interpret this last phrase. And if I was with you in a room, I would get you to shout it out loud, all together, in unison. And the whole room shouts out with me, opportunity is nowhere. Opportunity is nowhere. And by the time I say it the 3rd time, someone's going, now here, nowhere, now here, nowhere, now here. And look, you could defend either. You could defend either. But if you have the ability as a leader to take a team of people and shift their thinking by aligning these three elements from opportunities nowhere to opportunities now here, that is a game changer. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for listening. I'm going to stop my presentation, and I think we might have time for some questions.
Jim, what a fantastic presentation. I now know why you are Speaker of the Year 2025. Thank you so much.
The audience will be the judge of that.
Absolutely love that. And it sits very well with something that I share as well. I've shared many times here. It's not about our perception. It's about the perspective we choose to hold, about how we see
Right.
what's coming across the horizon towards us, whether it's AI, whether it's our ability to lead through challenge and through change.
Yeah.
So at that point, I know there'll be loads of questions. I've been watching the chat. I'm going to hand straight over to Steve, who'd like to field some questions to you. If you'd like to hang on for us to do that, please, Jim.
Yeah, of course.